You are listening to episode 19 with Friedemann from Holistic Songwriting. Welcome to the Reload podcast, where everything we do is to empower the independent artist. We interview people, brands, and organizations working in every aspect of the music industry. The purpose of the podcast is to give you an insight to their careers, how they got to where they are now, and some of the best advice that can help you in your own journey. My name is Pepe, and let's get started with this week's episode.
We're not who we used to be. We're not who we used to be.
Welcome back to the podcast, guys. If you're new, thank you for tuning in. This week I had the pleasure to talk with Friedemann from Holistic Songwriting, which is an awesome YouTube channel, and you should definitely go and check it out. So what does Friedemann do? Well, he's a professional musician and chart-topping author, and he certainly knows a thing or two about songwriting and composition. I'll let him explain his background later on in our chat, but he knows a lot about how to market yourself, how to write commercially viable music, and how to connect with your audience. His book, The Addiction Formula, is available to buy now on Amazon, which sheds light on a bunch of proven techniques for writing songs, and his insight videos can be found on YouTube under the name of Holistic Songwriting. Don't forget you can read the show notes at reloadsessions.com. Okay, welcome to the Reload podcast. My name is Pepe, and today we have a really special guest who I'm super excited to have on the show. We have Friedemann from Holistic Songwriting. Welcome, Friedemann.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Can I just check that I am saying your name correctly?
It's Friedemann, but it's totally fine. Everyone gets that one wrong.
Sorry, man. It's the English accent. I can't pull off. I can't pull off those tones. I've listened to a bunch of your videos, and I've listened to some of the podcasts too. And when you say your name and your surname, it's like I need to replay that like 10 times just to get, because it's so fast. And
Yeah, I'm getting a lot of comments of people saying like quoting me on that and like, Hey everyone, and then they'll just put a bunch of exclamation marks from Holistic Songwriting.
Yeah, you know what you should do? You should, each time you make a new video or the new podcast, you should see how quick you can say it, to the point when it gets shorter and shorter and shorter and shorter, to the point where it's just absolutely ridiculous and nobody understands. But anyway, man, thank you so much for joining us today on the Reload podcast.
Yeah, sure.
Now, this is usually the time when I would kind of explain a little bit what you do, but I think it's probably best if you kind of let us know and let our listeners know who you are and what you do.
Well, I call myself a musical profiler. So what I do is I, on YouTube, look at different artists and see what they do musically and how that relates to their image. So in the past, I've done Adele, Coldplay, Ed Sheeran, The Weeknd, Taylor Swift, all these popular artists, and I just look at how their musical message or whatever they're doing in their music relates to how they publicly portray themselves in interviews, on stage, what kind of colors they use, what kind of logos they have, and how all of that fits together and how all of that is connected to their personality.
Right.
So that's one big part of what I do. That's kind of, I guess, what I'm most known for is that YouTube series, the artist series. Mm-hmm. And the other part of what I do is holistic songwriting, mm-hmm. which is kind of the school in the background. So if you want to learn how to do these things yourself for your own music, or if you have an artist that you produce or something like that, then I have a whole school in the background that teaches you how to write better hooks, how to structure your music better, and stuff like that. And part of that is, for example, my book, The Addiction Formula, which teaches you how to actually structure your songs more effectively to really draw in an audience.
Right. I mean, there's a lot there that you have just said. And I think one thing that is really cool is that it's certainly holistic songwriting. It's, approaching everything, the songwriting process from all angles and making sure everything is covered. And that's one of the reasons we wanted to, have a chat with you today. There's just so much going on, and you clearly know what you're talking about. But for any of the listeners out there, if you've not seen any of Friedemann's videos, they are really, really cool. They're the kind of videos that you say, okay, right, I have 3 minutes. Let me just watch something on YouTube. And you watch one, and you're like, okay, let me watch the next video, and let me watch the next video. Okay, I need to know how The Weeknd wrote this song. Let me watch this one. And it's one of those things where 45 minutes has gone by, so you must have amazing watch time on YouTube. But yeah, I would love to know a little bit about how or where all of this started. Let's take it all the way back. What kind of music did you grow up on or listen to as a kid?
My first love was really Bryan Adams,
Right.
and I listened to a lot of Bryan Adams when I was a teenager, or I guess even before I was a teenager. And then one day, I think I went to Paris with my dad, and like we went to a hotel, and the TV was on, and we never had a TV, so like, you know, MTV was never playing. But that day, Linkin Park's "In the End" was on TV, and it was like, oh, immediately in love, you know. And so that's when I slowly fell in love with that whole nu metal scene, and that was like a big part of my teens, I guess.
Right.
And then I went to study music, and for that I went to study jazz guitar. So I listened to a lot of jazz and then also classical music. Then I went to the Netherlands because I quit my studies of jazz guitar because I didn't like it at all. Went to the Netherlands to study jazz guitar and I studied jazz guitar in Freiburg in Germany. Then I went to the Netherlands to study media music, which was mind-blowing because we just did everything there. And there I listened to a lot of electronic music, a lot of pop music, a lot of orchestral music. Did my minor in game music there.
Oh, wow.
And so a completely different thing again. Was a media composer for a couple of years. Went to LA for my internship to, you know, write with Jeff Rona, who wrote for Hans Zimmer, and it was pretty crazy. And but the one thing that stuck from that all that time was that Jeff said this one thing when I was there for my internship, because he had written this book, and that's how I found out about him, which is called The Real World, I believe. That was like one of the first books I read when I got into film music, and so that's how I heard about him. And we just briefly talked about it, and it was like, is that still a thing? Like, do people still read books? Because I always thought like books are kind of like out of fashion or something like that. And he was like, no, actually I still get emails about it every week, and it's opened a lot of doors for me. So I was like, interesting, you know, maybe I should write a book myself, because I was like, you know, I always was interested in pop music or how songs work. I'm a very analytical person, so I love analyzing music and artists themselves. And so I wrote this book, The Addiction Formula, and that was really how it all started with holistic songwriting.
Right.
And slowly but surely, I've, you know, increased the range of what I teach. So there's now hook, chorus, and all that kind of stuff, and lyrics. But yeah, that's really how all of that came to be, is just because Jeff Rona in LA said to me, "Oh yeah, I'm still getting emails about that every day."
Wow. And so it sounds like, you know, there's been different eras in your life where you have kind of taken different influences and you know, absorbed different types of music and learned new things, and then all of a sudden, you know, you wanted to write a book. And so how long ago was it that the book came out?
That will be almost 3 years now. Actually, it came out in the 1st of October 2015. So yeah.
Wow. Not too long ago at all. And so was it the book that came first, and then you decided to open this up by creating all these really cool videos, or was it the other way around?
I mean, so I'd read a lot of marketing books back then, because I was like, okay, I'm going for this all by myself, so I gotta be prepared. And so I had some YouTube videos to like, sort of to have like a proper launch for the book, I guess. And that just went horrible. And really? I think in my first month I sold maybe, if I'm lucky, 10 books or something like that, or 15 maybe, but just, I mean, nothing. And it was like that for the next almost 2 years. Like if I had a good month, it would be like 30 books, and I'd be like really proud of myself for that month, you know.
Right.
And yeah, it's really just over the last 6 months that this really has taken off, and now it's a bestseller on Amazon. So
it's amazing.
It's gone so quick, you know.
Yeah. So what was the change that kind of took the book off in the past 6 months, from going from 15 a month to, you know, whatever it is that you're doing now?
You know, last December I released a course, the Lyric Writing Master Files, and that like had a spike in my sales, basically. That was like enough to call my parents and say like, okay, I don't need any financial help from you guys anymore. I'm gonna do it all by myself from now on. Like, I can do this. Yeah. Because I managed to do it with this course. So like, if I can do this once, I can do it several times. Like, I can make a living off of this.
Sure.
And so in January, I really sat down and thought about, okay, how can I get this moving? How can I get the ball rolling with this whole thing? And really sat down for 2 or 3 months and worked on a new email marketing campaign that is much more involved than what I had before. And most notably, the artist series. And the first episode of that was the Taylor Swift episode, which took me alone like over 1.5 months to finish that whole thing.
Wow.
So I put a lot of time into that. And my mindset for the first time really was, I'm going to create something that I would watch. Because all the content that is on my YouTube channel, I'm really proud of. I think it's all good stuff. But it's for someone who is fairly new to the songwriting world, I think. And the new stuff is really the only thing, like the artist series is the only thing that really I would watch, that I would get really excited about. Right. And whenever I came to like a decision in the process where it was like, I could add in this animation here. But I'm not going to do it. That's not worth it. It's just 2 seconds. But then I was like, you know what? Let's just make it count. Like just this once, let's just make an amazing video. And, when the Taylor Swift video released, it was a huge hit for my channel. Before I had like 60, 70 views on my videos. Sure. And that like all of a sudden that exploded and it was 20,000, 30,000 views. And when I did my third episode, the Ed Sheeran one, which is now at, I think, 600,000 views, which is, mind blowing for me coming from 60, 70 views. Sure. That's when it really took off and when people, I think, really took note of me.
Yeah. And so when did the Taylor Swift one come out? Was that in January then?
No, because in January I made the plans for it all. I think it must have come out like March or maybe even April. Right. Probably. Yeah.
So you sat down and you made like a marketing campaign for how you were going to put yourself out there on the internet and create these a series of really cool videos, which turned out to be the artist series. And am I right in saying that was all as almost a promotion or to kind of open the eyes of your audience to the books that you write? Is that correct?
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I made a 2-page marketing plan for myself. Just at the top, I put like, I need to make, $3,000 a month to survive, Sure. So, or actually, I think it was $1,000. I said $1,000 is like what I need, what I absolutely need to survive with this. And then like the next step was, okay, what do I need to do to like make this amount of money? Like I need to sell this amount of courses, and to do that, I need to have people buy the courses. So what do I need to do to that? And like step by step, I just broke it down until I arrived at, okay, several steps in my plan, and the last one of of all of those steps was the artist series, which, right. I mean, it's great content in itself, I think, but for me, for my business, it works as marketing for my courses and all of that stuff. So if you're interested in the stuff behind all of those videos, like that's when you get into the courses. If you really want to find out how to do all of this stuff yourself.
Yeah, it's almost like a little teaser. Saying this is what you will learn a lot more of if you come and kind of spend time and do the course or read one of the books or something like that, maybe.
Exactly. Yeah. And I mean, the greatest thing about it really is ever since it's taken off, all of those fears of not making it, of like, starving for another month or something like that, just went out the window. And now I can finally focus on just what's important to me, which is just creating great content and really helping people out. Sure. And that's really freeing in that way, because it really allows me to do a lot more.
Sure. And so this is something that you spend your week doing. You don't have anything else on the side?
I do. I mean, I have a cover band, which I recently quit because holistic songwriting is really slowly taking over my life. Yeah. And I'm still writing music for various artists. Oh, awesome. So that's always fun. I don't ever want to stop doing that, because that's why I got into music in the first place, is for writing music. And also I feel it's weird to teach people something that you don't actually do yourself. So right. I love writing music. So I'm going to keep doing that for sure.
No, I think a lot of people don't. I think a lot of people don't quite understand how much effort it takes to create the videos, or to set it up and edit it and get it out there. So I think it's awesome. Like I told you before, I'm a big fan of the artist series.
Thanks so much.
And I know firsthand how you need to be strategic with these things, and you need to plan them in order for them to go well, or to be received well by your audience. But again, anybody listening, even if you have just a tiny interest, which you should be, because that's the whole point of this podcast, with songwriting, and some of the meanings or how they do specific songs or how they write specific songs, I would absolutely recommend to check out the series, the artist series on YouTube, because it really is one of those kind of group of videos which you really do want to watch more of. So, but
Thanks.
no problem, no problem. It's really cool to with this podcast, we want to get people that we genuinely have a respect for. Rather than it being a case of just bringing in anybody to make up numbers. We've really sat down and tried to find people that we really are in awe of, or companies or organizations that we want to work with or we have worked with. So it means a lot to us that you take the time out today to have a chat with me.
Cool. Thanks so much. What's really interesting about that, what you just said, is that 6 months ago I was basically a nobody, right? And it's funny that, because ever since I started doing holistic songwriting and really sharing some of my, I would call it best kept secrets. I think we all have those secrets, right? When we write and we're like, oh, that's cool, I'm going to do that again. Like, that's going to become part of my sound or something like that. Or we have like a favorite plugin or a favorite even preset or something like that in a synthesizer maybe. And it's funny because once I started sharing all of this stuff, like really a lot of doors opened up. And it really was, I guess, a lesson for me in like, sharing is caring. I guess it sounds a little bit silly now, but it really changed my life to just be open with this stuff. And I think if we're, as songwriters, more of a community and really work together more and help us, I think it really would open so many doors for us, instead of like holding on to our beloved secrets or techniques or whatever. And because I know plenty of songwriters, because I studied at 2 different conservatories, that are like that are very like hold back everything that they know because they don't want to give anything away. And it's damaging, I think, to their careers ultimately, because you sense that with those people. And it's a difference if you work with someone who's just really open and really is there to help you and really wants to create something great with you, if you're writing with someone. Or if you're writing with someone, you get the feeling of like, they're just holding back. You don't know what's going on. There's like a barrier between the two of you.
Sure. Have you ever been in a writing session when you have gone there with a totally open mind and been like, hey, let's see, here are my ideas, and that person kind of just holds back and doesn't really want to contribute or doesn't want to give something that they're maybe sitting on?
Yeah, but the good thing about that is that you can always say like, I'm never going to see you again, so sod off.
Yeah, so you could just 2 fingers up and you're
exactly.
good.
Or 1 finger up in my case, yes.
Yeah, exactly. No, I think it can be tricky. And it's really interesting that you say that, you think it holds back the development or the progress of a songwriter. I think, maybe at the end of the day, it comes down to the certain mentality of each songwriter, where you were saying sharing is caring. I totally agree with that, but I could see why some people might think it's more beneficial to them if they hold their cards close to their chest rather than but sharing it.
And it's the same thing with networking too. Like I used to think that networking was like getting to know like the big guys in the business or whatever, but it's really like, if you meet someone, you should introduce them to as many people as you can. Like you should try to broaden the network, because that really ultimately delivers value to them as well. And so I think it's really about making your network bigger, about connecting people as quickly as possible. And I think that is what networking is, and it's not just keeping certain contacts for yourself or something like that.
Sure. So for an amateur songwriter, would you recommend that when they're networking, it's really something not to turn your nose up at? It's something that you need to kind of pay attention to and give it your all. I mean, what advice would you have to give to a songwriter in the early stages of their career? Maybe somebody who's just come out of school who doesn't really know the industry or really doesn't know the scene too well.
I mean, first of all, read Never Eat Alone, which is a great book. I don't know if you know it, but that's a good one.
This is also where you plug your book. There's another book you should read, which is called...
I don't have a book on that, unfortunately.
Ah, man. Damn, this is where I was going. I was hoping you would just put any of your books in there, man. I was setting you up there. That's what I was trying to do.
It's a shame.
No,
it's
cool. But sorry, I interrupted.
No, so that's a good book, Never Eat Alone. And also, I think it really comes down to just being nice and just being a good person. I really think that. I mean, sometimes I get emails from songwriters who are I think approaching this with a completely wrong mindset, in that they're sending me like these page-long emails of like discussions that they had with co-writers about the rights and the money and all of that stuff. And I'm like, you're nobody. Like, you don't have any say in this. Just go like 50-50 or whatever they want. If they have more power than you, just fine. Like if they want all the rights, that's fine. You're just trying to get your name out there, in the beginning. In the beginning, like, you're just trying to do as many jobs as possible and to make friends as quickly as possible. And when you've worked with someone a couple of times, then it's time to say like, hey, you know what? I did a lot of work on those last tracks. Maybe this time I could get a little bit bigger percentage. And then it's like, I think it's appropriate to ask that,
Sure.
But I think music has to be fun. And if the people that are involved with it and the people that you work with don't have fun, I think that's just doomed. And you should really overthink this whole thing. And if it's really what you want to do, because in this business, it's the most fun. I have the most fun working with people who are enjoying themselves. I don't have fun working with someone who's just all about the money and, signing contracts and all of that stuff. I mean, that's all important.
Yeah.
But ultimately, like, when you start writing, all of that has to be, in a different room, like in a completely different place. Like, you want to be focusing on the music at that moment.
Sure. I suppose in the early kind of stages, it's really a lesson in humility to know not to, it's not about your ego, and it's not about, you're not as big as you think you are. Like you were saying, as ruthless as it might sound, you are nobody. So you kind of need to just suck it up and write and write and write and write and improve what you're doing, to the point where, lessons have been learned and you are getting better at what you're doing.
Exactly. And I think it's really like, there's a book that I've always recommend is So Good They Can't Ignore You, which I really believe in. I think if you're just doing great work, people will notice you. And I've really noticed that with the artist series myself. I think because I'm really proud of it, and boom, people noticed it. And I really believe in that. If you do something that's truly great, people will notice that. And so I think hard work pays off. Never be humble. Obviously, I think humility is really, really important in this industry.
Yeah.
And
I mean,
also
with being humble, again, it's an industry where today you're going to write with somebody, and then tomorrow you're going to write with someone else, and you're going to play with a different band, and you're going to meet this guy at this gig. You meet so many people just in the space of a few days that if you are not a nice person, the word will go around. People, it's kind of as simple as that. Word will go around that you're not fun to be with, or you're not. Well, it's not about being fun to be with it. You're not a nice person. I find that if you're disrespectful and, treat other people ways that you wouldn't want to be treated, that eventually, people are going to know that, and everybody will know that, and nobody will really want to work with you. I mean, at Reload, we filmed over 500 of the sessions. And so, we've worked with a lot of different artists, a lot of different managers, a lot of different labels and PR teams and all of this stuff. And I hate to admit it, but you have a preference of which teams you really enjoy working with, who are really, really easy and straightforward to work with, and which teams are can be quite difficult, unnecessarily so. So I think that's one thing that a lot of young musicians or young songwriters, or even people who just want to get into that industry, really need to understand, that you can let your ego take over, but at what cost?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm right there with you.
So, it's a hard lesson to learn, and you can go to school as much as you want, and you can, kind of be top of your class and do everything like that. But I think that those are the kind of lessons that you don't really get to learn until you're just in there, and until you've kind of just started with it all,
Yeah.
So Friedemann, I wanted to ask you, do you have a favorite video of the artist series?
So my personal favorite, but bear in mind that I'm like a music theory geek, is the Bruno Mars one. That I thought went in depth the most, which is something I like.
Sure.
But I also really like the Adele one, which got the least views of all of my videos, because I think it's 16 minutes long or something like that. It's opened a lot of doors for me, coincidentally. So it's funny because the people that did watch it really liked it.
Yeah.
But it's really long, so a lot of people didn't watch it, I think, because of that, and because the video is not called How Adele Writes a Melody, but I think it's called How Adele Markets Herself.
Oh, I see.
Which might have been off-putting to some. But I thought that was I really like that, and I think it's a really interesting case study. So if you're into like theory, go for Bruno Mars. If you're interested in marketing and all that kind of stuff, I suggest you go for Adele. And if you're interested in just like if you're none of those things, maybe, then I would say go for Ed Sheeran. That's what I hear the most people like.
I think what you were just saying now brings up a really interesting point, that maybe the Adele one didn't get as many views as you would have hoped. But my opinion is that views aren't necessarily, don't define success or anything like that. Because all it takes is if you have, let's say you have half the amount of views that you did on the Adele video compared to, let's say, Bruno Mars. But those people who were viewing that video, were more involved with that video, and they followed up, or they emailed you, or they spoke to you, or they got in contact with you somehow. That's more valuable than maybe some of the other videos. And I think a lot of young people, again, or young musicians, just want to put out videos out there and get millions of hits, and not really question or think, who's the audience behind these videos, who's watching them, and kind of how is that beneficial to me.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's all about engagement. It's all about finding a niche and really like making that niche happy, I think.
Sure.
So much better. Like Seth Godin said this in Purple Cow, I think, a product for everyone is a product for no one. And I truly believe that. If you make something that you want everyone to like, no one is going to like it, because it's like so, washed down. It's such a blurry product. It doesn't have, the nuts and bolts. It doesn't have the grittiness that something needs for me to really love it,
Sure.
So I think we're seeing this, like if you look at Netflix or YouTube even, or Facebook, like everything is condensed down to what we like. It's all based on recommendations, and it's trying to figure out how we tick as a person, and tries to personalize it all down to what these platforms think we like to watch. And I think so this is how the system works, and that's only going to get more in the future. So if you as a musician understand that and can write music for one very specific target audience, then you're really playing into that whole system, into that whole algorithm, all of these different platforms. And so if you have something that's very specific to one niche, it's always going to make it easier to find that niche instead of making something for everyone, because the algorithms don't know what to do with that, because they can't just send your video to everyone. They want to send it to one specific niche.
I mean, that translates really well to what we've seen at Reload. A lot of the young musicians that we work with, again, who've just come out of music school or something like that, they will produce, or they will create music that is very very radio friendly, and they'll do something with us, and then 2-3 years down the line they'll email us and say, hey, what, I've actually completely changed the direction, like completely changed the direction of what I was doing. Can we kind of change those videos? And I think that what you've just said now is something that people hopefully will eventually learn on their own, just through experience. But if you can kind of take these lessons now while you still are young, maybe you don't need to go through 3 years of trial and error.
Yeah, exactly.
So we've spoken a lot about the artist series and what you do, but quickly I'm keen to know, who are your favorite songwriters, or what are your favorite examples of a good song, or a song that you think is well written?
Oh, there's so many. It comes from I think it depends on the standpoint, from the point of view. Like if I'm looking at pop music, obviously Max Martin, Dr. Luke, and all those kinds of people are really just delivering great stuff every single time, I think. When it comes to like people that I admire artistically, that would be more bands like, so artists like Avishai Cohen. Do you know Avishai Cohen?
I don't even know how to spell that.
Yeah. So Avishai is Avishai, and Cohen is Cohen. Okay. And he's this Israeli double bass player, I think, and he makes like Eastern European jazz. And it's like, jazz will turn off a lot of people, I think, just hearing that word. But it's so amazing, like what he does with just a trio. To me, it's the most amazing music out there, I think. Like it's nobody knows about this guy, and it's just, I mean, the jazz scene people do know him, I think, but he's just this fantastic musician. I've seen him live twice, and it's just breathtaking. Like it's honestly, I couldn't sit still on my chair. It's so incredible, and it's just beautiful. Like everyone can really enjoy this music. I truly believe in that. Like jazz, I know is not for everyone, but Avishai Cohen, I totally believe everyone can listen to that and just be like, just be in awe just because of how musical that guy is, you know.
Okay. I'm going to take you up on that after this conversation. I'm going to go and find his music, and I'm going to listen to it, and I hope that I can listen and appreciate and understand at the same time, because I find sometimes with some jazz it's too much for my simple mind. You know,
Yeah.
I'm not trained in music, so so some jazz I find like what, but I'm
Yeah.
definitely going to check this out after. Is there anybody else that you listen to who blows your mind on a regular basis?
Oh yeah, for sure. First of all, if you're gonna check out Avishai Cohen,
Yeah.
check out Gently Disturbed is like my favorite album of his.
Okay.
Another musician I really love is Ibrahim Malouf, which is spelled Ibrahim Malouf, who is a trumpet player, quarter tone trumpet player, also Eastern European jazz, that kind of thing.
Okay.
What I love about this guy is that he incorporates a lot of different things into his music. And so, you know, I studied jazz for 2 years, and a lot of jazz musicians are jazz Nazis. Like they will only listen to jazz, right? Like pop music is the devil for them.
Yeah.
And what I love about Ibrahim Malouf is that he just incorporates all these different things. Like he's going to have like a salsa thing or a blues thing. And it's so seamless. And to me, it's like, I've never seen that in any other artist out there. Honestly, I mean that. I've never seen that anywhere else, how seamlessly he manages to like incorporate all these different elements and just still make it flow really, really well. And it's one of the most amazing records like out there to me. It's just an amazing artist.
So again, do you think a simple mind like mine would be able to appreciate that?
I think so. Yeah, I think because they're really groovy. They're just, I mean, it's all instrumental music, which I'm personally not that big a fan of, but like those two artists like really turned me around, and it was really like a whole new world for me. It's like watching a David Lynch movie for the first time, and you're like, wow, is this what is possible? I never knew this was even possible, you know?
Right.
So those two I really, really love. And then it's like alternative rock artists like Tool I find really amazing because of like their complicated rhythms, but they still manage to make it sound natural and it still grooves, that kind of thing. I find that really interesting. Mm-hmm. And then like a lot of really small bands that probably no one has ever heard of that I draw a lot of inspiration from, right. Like Lettuce is like big in the funk scene. I really like those guys.
Like Lettuce, the food lettuce.
Yeah, like Lettuce. Like
right.
Yeah, they have a record called Live in Tokyo. It's the album really, really good. Okay. Snarj, Snaarj, is a really small band from Bloomington, Indiana. Mm-hmm. That is like really experimental. Like they have no harmony instruments, so it's just drums, bass. That kind of acts like a harmony instrument. Like he also plays chords, mm-hmm. And then it's an alt saxophone and a soprano saxophone. So a lot of jazz-related people here. I'm not even that big of a jazz guy, actually. But,
sure, but all your favorite things, all the things that blow your mind, are kind of related to some kind of jazz.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think it's because those guys really just experiment the most. I think jazz is dying, and so it's those people who just really try to keep it alive, and they just really like go on the edge, you know, like almost no other style dares to do. Like maybe metal music does to some degree, but even there we have like these formulas and people keep doing the same thing over and over again. So I think the styles that interest me most are probably those that are slowly dying and people trying to revive them by doing crazy things.
Sure. I mean, there's definitely, you know, allure in that. And, you know, what about pop music? And I mean, you know, after naming all these people that I don't really know, I can't imagine that you listen to too much pop music, but is there a time where you listen to pop music and you go, hey, that is a really good pop song, or that is, you know, something that is put together really well?
I mean, I really like Drake. I'm a big fan.
Are we talking new Drake or old Drake?
Both, actually.
Because those are two very different people.
Yeah, true.
Really different people. And I think, you know, I'm a fan, and I think for me it was really hard to accept that old kind of quote-unquote soft Drake is kind of done, and now it's more this, you know, bravado, this kind of tough guy trying to you know, the new style of Drake. But I mean, you know, what he's done and the way he kind of oh gosh, I don't know how to articulate it. The way he goes into a local area and he becomes pals with people in certain areas, and then he represents them. It's almost like he's taking them over, almost like a vassal state or something like that. But what is it about Drake that you like?
What I find fascinating about Drake is that he kind of, for me, reinvented flow in a way. Because, like, if we look back at the '90s, if you look at, like, say, Linkin Park, In the End, or something like that, if you listen to that rap section, which I'm not gonna sing because that would be copyright violations. Sure. But like that rap has a very like natural flow, like the da 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 da. So I can't sing rhythm, obviously, but so that's like a really like obvious kind of flow, and we like know what to expect. Right? It's never like we're on the edge of our seats thinking like, what's he gonna do next? But with Drake, what I found really cool is that he totally breaks that up, and you never quite know what he's gonna do next. Like there's some songs that are just a little bit more standard in terms of flow, but then there's the few examples like Started from the Bottom or Worst Behavior that are just so. Do you know those songs?
I do, yeah. And I got to be honest with you, those were my least favorite songs.
So those two I find really fascinating, and I can understand that. You know, it's like I'm sure I have a different perspective on it than you do. But from my perspective, I find those really interesting because they're so you never know what to expect, and they're super repetitive. The music is always the same, but he just like sometimes blurts out like one word or two words.
Yeah.
And then just you never know what's going to happen next. And this is even further this idea because by the production. Because they cut out all of the breaths, so you never know when a new line is going to start. Normally, you get this thing with like, and then you know, okay, now we're going to hear something. Yeah. With him, it's just like Worst Behavior, and you just it's just like this.
Hey, where did that come from?
Exactly, like, and there's no breath. It's literally breathless, and that's the effect it has on me as well. When I listen to it, it's so stop and go. I can never ease into it, and there's an underlying tension that I personally really love, and it's something that's growing bigger and bigger in trap. And I personally find it really, really fascinating what's going on there. And a lot of people might think like, or even like rappers say like, this is not hip hop anymore. To me, it's like a reinvention of hip hop. I think it's finding tension again in rhythm, and that I find really fascinating.
Right. I mean, after listening to what you've just said, I kind of get it now. I'd never thought about the breath thing, the fact that they've cut that out. Never ever has that crossed my mind, but it makes total sense. And now every time I listen to those songs, all I'm going to hear is that he does not breathe. That's the kind of takeaway message from that. No, I mean, I think it's really cool. You know, obviously you have, you know, in the artist series, you said something like, you know, a good songwriter should be able to write in different styles when they have to. I think you were comparing Taylor Swift kind of music to Weeknd's kind of music, and so you know it shows that you have a range of what you listen to or what you appreciate or what you find interesting. Do you think that's something that's pretty important for a songwriter or somebody who wants to be a songwriter, you know, or can they just get away with, you know, listening to folk music for the rest of their time?
It depends on what you want to do. If you want to be a songwriter for other people, for other artists, then I think you have to kind of be broad and be able to write a couple of different things. And the more inspiration you can draw from other styles, the better. So I urge you to listen to a lot of different things. Right. If it's about just writing for yourself, about being an artist, which is probably most of the young songwriters out there, before they got jaded and started to write for other people, then it might be fine to just like listen to one style of music, but it's hard to like really make something truly unique if you just listen to what's already out there, you know. Right. If you listen to the people, for example, in the folk scene, that have really, I think, put some progress on folk music, that really have furthered that genre, like people like Bon Iver or even someone like James Blake, who I still consider kind of a folk artist. Like they've really, really changed the genre from the ground up, you know. And I don't think they listen to just like, you know, Mumford and Sons and like or folk bands or something like that. Right. And not to put those bands down, obviously, but it's just they really have like their influences that they bring to that genre. Same with, you know, even if you look at dubstep, you know, Skrillex was a metal singer in like a hardcore band, so he brings those ideas from that genre and puts them into electronic music. I mean, not that he invented it, but he like is the one who made it famous, at least. And now we get like this weird hybrid of metal music and electronic music. I mean, that's a super outdated reference, maybe, with dubstep, but it's an example. Same thing with, you know, Hans Zimmer in the music film music world, who was a total, you know, synth nerd. He just was always really fascinated by analog synths and these huge, like, you know, gear thingies, whatever. And so he comes to film music where everyone else is just doing orchestral music, and he's the first one to say, like, no, I'm just going to do it this way. Right. And now he's the biggest film composer in the world.
Yeah. He's one person that I would love to go and watch live, and I never have had the opportunity, even though he's been to London recently a few times, and I've just totally missed out on it. But I see exactly what you mean about, you know, how it can be beneficial, and, you know, the only thing that's going to happen if you kind of diversify is that you'll gain knowledge. So, you know, it's something that, as somebody who's not a songwriter myself, you know, I can totally see how valuable it would be to switch it up a little bit and kind of take from different genres to build what I am doing myself. So what I want,
the thing is, I don't even just look at other genres. Like, I get a lot of inspiration just from about anything creative, really. I mean, I'm a total design nerd. Like, I love design and the idea of it and designing. Like, I sometimes just watch YouTube shows on logo design and stuff like that.
Sure, there's some really great podcasts out there on logo designs.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sorry, that's totally nothing. Sorry, that's nothing to do with songwriting. let me get back on track. I find a lot of the time when we have these conversations with different creatives or different people, that it's really easy just to go off on a tangent and talk about, you know, something that isn't necessarily to do with, you know, the podcast and what we need to be speaking about. But we do bring everybody down for a reason, so I think it's probably best that I speak to all of our guests about that reason. Okay. So, you know, is there anything that is really, you know, often easily overlooked when writing a song? I mean, just the way you spoke about Drake a moment ago about cutting out the breaths, that's something I'd never thought about. Is there anything off the top of your head that you know, a young or an emerging songwriter could hear and be like, oh my gosh, wow, that makes total sense? Is there any mistakes that you think 99% of songwriters make in the kind of beginning stages of their career? Was it, you know, like a rookie error, like a greenhorn mistake or something like that?
Oh, that's a difficult one.
I know I'm putting you on the spot there.
There's so many things that people are doing wrong. It's hard to pick one, unfortunately. I mean, first of all, let me explain my stance, because I think that's kind of important. I truly believe that in songwriting, you are allowed to do anything you want to do, unless if you have a reason for it. That's the only, like, a minor thing that I think you should have a reason for everything you're doing in songwriting. Sure. My stance is just like with holistic songwriting, my approach to songwriting is just saying, like, this is from a commercial perspective. If you want to make your songs appeal to a larger audience, then, like, I can help you. Like, that's sort of my mindset with this whole thing. So bear in mind that, you know, that's the mindset I'm coming from to this. Sure. Some things that I notice that happen all the time with beginning songwriters are, I mean, some basic musician things, like timing is not very good, or pitch is not quite there. But songwriting wise, it's all over the place. I mean, it's really, they're not using enough repetition in the melodies. It's hard to sing along to. They have too much lyrics. Like, they should just really edit it down to just make a couple of really memorable, like, lines, and just have those really, like, just play around with those lines instead of having just, like, we're not writing prose and putting music to it. It's really something else. Like, writing lyrics is a completely different ballgame. It's just completely different. Not that one of them, the two is better, obviously, but writing lyrics is completely different than just writing a text and then just saying, like, okay, let's sing a melody to that.
Sure.
So that's one. Not paying enough attention to production is another one. I think any songwriter today should be able to produce their own music, just because it gives you all the power. You have all the control over your own music. You don't have to pay someone else to do it. You can produce much more music this way. It's so easy. It's so cheap today to produce your own music. So really, why wouldn't you? I think, even if it's just your demos, but it's just going to help you to, even if it's just your demos, it's still going to help you to show, like, to a professional producer what you kind of want your music to sound like, you know?
Sure. And that's created by you, you know, so you will have a better understanding of what you want it to be like, you know?
Exactly, and it helps you understand what the producer is doing. If you work with a musician who's never worked with a producer before, then they don't know what they want in the studio. They're just
Sure.
like, "Oh, I guess this sounds nice," or they
Yeah.
say, I don't like it," but they can't tell you why. It's the same when you work with someone who's never written a song before, which I have plenty of times to, So it's the same thing. Like if, for example, when I was writing film music, you work with people who have no idea about music, so you just have to like figure out a language that the two of you can understand. But if you learn music production, you learn that language. You understand what a compressor is. You know what an EQ is. You know how to pan something and all of that kind of stuff. And what's important in music production, you kind of learn just the basics. That's already going to help you when working with a professional producer.
It just help. I mean, imagine it. Articulating your thoughts and even your emotions. It just becomes a lot easier if you have that knowledge. So I was going to ask you actually, do you get sent a lot of music to critique?
Oh yeah, tons every day.
Even unsolicited? So people you don't know, do they just, hey,
Yeah.
hey Friedemann, how are you doing? Oh, really?
Yeah. I mean, I don't have the time to listen to all of them, obviously, which is why it's a paid service now.
Yeah.
So if you want to have a song for me to listen to, just get in touch with me, and I will send you a link through which you can like purchase like a feedback session, I guess.
Yeah.
Because I'm just getting too many songs sent every day, so I really can't do that anymore.
Yeah. No, I imagine that must be really time consuming.
Oh, by the way, on that note, though, if you're interested in that kind of thing, though, on my YouTube channel, like the very first thing, the very first kinds of videos that I did was called Feedback Friday, which not a lot of people know about and probably haven't watched yet. And because what I did there was, in the very beginning, like that was my marketing plan at the beginning for holistic songwriting. People sent in songs, and I would critique them for free.
Right.
On video for everyone else to see. And I think a lot of people aren't watching them because they're thinking like, oh, it's not my song, so why would I watch this? But really, like, all the beginners are making kind of the same mistakes, and if you watch those videos, you can understand like my approach to this whole thing. And oftentimes I will just take up like a chorus and say like, listen, here's how I would write this, and I'll just play that same thing again and show you like, here's how I would have sung that,
Right.
And so I think that is an extremely valuable lesson for any songwriter, especially if you're just starting out. Watching those videos, even if they're not with your songs, I still think you can learn a lot from those.
Sure, I imagine because you can see the mistakes that are being made, and so it's a lesson to not make those mistakes. Do you continue with the Feedback Friday videos?
Well, sometimes if I get like someone who wants feedback, I sometimes ask them like, hey, it would be cool if I upload this to YouTube. So far, no one has said yes. Most people just want it to be like closed off, want it to be private, unfortunately. But I'm still making those videos. It's just that they're not public anymore.
Oh, I see. Okay, that's cool. I'm going to go and check out your Feedback Friday just because I love the concept of it's not to be mean. It's just to help them in the long run, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure. I think that's always the most important. What I try to do with my feedback is I try to look past the song and try to look at the writer behind it. I try to look for certain things that went wrong and what might be the mindset behind it that went wrong. So I try to tackle the mindset instead of just the specific mistakes.
Sure. Sure. So, Friedemann, I have one final question which we ask everybody on the Reload podcast. Now, this is totally up to you, and you can interpret it how you want. But we always ask, what do you think makes a successful artist?
Okay, let me think about this one. I think in terms of song material, it comes down to three major components to me. And those are hook or melody, like how good your melody is in your chorus mostly. Groove, how danceable it is, how upbeat it is, and lyrical storytelling, what the Addiction formula is about, like structuring in essence, with two minor components, which are lyrics and production. Minor, I think the other three are more important. And then for the rest of it, I think it's mindset, marketing, and working with the right people.
Right.
So I think those are really the big ones to me.
Sure. No, I love how that was a pretty thorough answer, and I love how that took you like just 2-3 seconds to think of. No, it's great. It's testament to what you do, and that the things that you talk about in your videos and your books are, things that you genuinely think about, and you've spent a long time trying to formularize that that kind of understanding and how to do those things. Sorry.
One thing I want to say about that is, though, there's formulas to all of what I do and to what all songwriters are doing to some extent, I think. But there's always an element of chaos where something happens that we didn't plan on, and that ends up often in the finished song. Right. Like, I think that the songwriters that write just by formula end up sounding always the same, and they're just repeating themselves, or they're repeating what's hot at the market right now. Right. And I think the truly interesting artists, the ones that really have something to say, are those that allow for coincidences to happen and for, accidents to happen. There's this really, really amazing Netflix series called Abstract. And so it's about design again, but that first episode you should absolutely watch. I think any songwriter should watch that first episode. German guy, he's like designs the covers for the New Yorker, I think. And he's just talking about his creative process. And one thing he says that I find really fascinating is in every project that I do, I just do one thing that really scares me, and I try to make it work. Right. And it's the same thing when you're watching Bob Ross paint, like live on television, right? He puts one big splash of paint across the entire thing, and you're like, oh my God, he ruined it. And then five seconds later, you're like, oh no, he's a genius. Of course,
it's his son. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. It's a friendly little bush. Yeah. So that's kind of how it works with songwriting as well, I found. And after I saw that show, I was like, oh yeah, right, there is this thing that just really makes songs better. And I went back to my songs and I added some more edge to it, just one thing that I think makes it weird or stand out, and just make that work.
That's cool.
So
man. That's very cool.
I think it's both of those. I think you have to be bold. You think you have to reinvent, and it's also learning the formula if you want to appeal to a larger audience.
Sure. No, that makes a lot of sense. Friedemann, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast. Before we say goodbye, how can our listeners find out more about you or kind of connect with you?
Just Google Holistic Songwriting. And if you want to get in touch with me personally through email, then at holisticsongwriting.com, just click on, I think it's, the header is called Products and Free Stuff or something like that. And if you download one of the free things, then you're automatically put on my email list. And if you respond to any one of those emails, that just gets straight to me.
Awesome. Guys, I definitely suggest to kind of connect with Friedemann, or sign up to the mailing list, or take one of the free products and just check out what he does, because he does know his stuff. And I'm really confident that, there are a lot of lessons that can be learned there. Friedemann, thank you so much for your time. And thank you.
Cool. Thanks for having me.
So that was episode 19 with Friedemann from Holistic Songwriting. I really hope you were able to take away some useful bits of information there. And if you want to read the show notes, don't forget you can find everything on our website, reloadsessions.com. We also have other creative aspects to Reload that can help you grow as a creative. If you're interested, check out our website at reloadsessions.com. And remember, everything we do is to empower you, the independent artist. The website is packed full of live acoustic sessions, free networking events, and articles that can benefit you in your music career. I really hope you enjoyed this episode, guys. It was really great speaking with Friedemann. If there is anybody else that you would like to see featured on the Reload podcast, do let us know. Find us at Twitter or Facebook or Instagram, or contact us directly via reloadsessions.com. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.
I'm just trying to remember how it feels to have a heart, babe.